Alrighty, we are here with Nadia Neytcheva, which I messed up. Nadia Neytcheva, right? That was better, right?
Yes, that's perfect.
With co-founder, CEO of Doctorsa, really cool company. Started in Italy, going to other countries in Europe and beyond, connecting travelers with English-speaking doctors. I think just a brilliant idea. Nadia, so excited to speak to you today. Thanks for joining. How you doing today?
Thank you. Excited to be here. Nice meeting you. All good.
Yeah, of course. So I'm only going to call you by your last name from here. No, I'm just kidding. But no, really cool story. Excited to dive into what Doctorza looks like today. But I think before we do that, we have to talk about how it started and what it used to look like. So, can you share what the early days and like where the idea came from for doctors in Italy?
Of course, I'd love to. So we have to go back a while ago, and I was working at a company where our goal was to kind of find all English-speaking doctors in the world and transform them into like an accessible listing online so that people can find them and select them. And one of the first doctors that I met in this experience was actually my co-founder. And he was fine. He had just started working on Doctors in Italy back then. And Doctors in Italy back then was the first attempt at solving a very real issue, which is when you're far from your home and you're traveling and you fall sick, you not only experience the stress of being sick like everyone else, but you're also completely lost. You don't speak the language, you don't know the local healthcare, you have no local resources, no one to turn to. So something that can be very minor, like a sore throat, a urinary tract infection, something that commonly wouldn't be such an issue for you, it becomes potentially a horrible experience and something that can ruin your travel altogether. So he had realized that this was an issue and wanted to solve it as a physician himself. And I'm not a physician myself, and my background is in economics and innovation and the digital world. And we basically combine these two mindsets into creating something that can work and scale globally.
Yeah, and I'm not a physician as well, so we'll make that super clear. Nobody takes any medical advice from from
No.
this episode, but it's a clever idea. Where was the insight of like, if we're creating something like this, it needs to be convenient. It needs to have doctors that now it's like primarily speak English or can do all the medical treatment discussion in English. How did that come about?
Well, if you think about it, when we travel to a different country, and as an Italian, I'm not a native English speaker. So when traveling abroad, especially when you go to a country where English is not the primary language, you can have these funny moments of misunderstandings where you think you're ordering something at a restaurant and you get something completely different. You try and make sense of the local language, and it's both funny and confusing. It's very different when you have to explain some symptoms that you're having and you have someone in front of you and you're trying to mimic that. I don't know, you feel dizzy when you go up the stairs, or that you have excruciating pain in your ear or something like that. So in these situations, you really want to make sure that you understand each other. So language is absolutely a necessity. You have to be sure to be able to communicate, also to be able to be reassured, to understand the treatment, what you need to do to get better. So that was the first realization that language was an issue. And we started from there. And then from there, we realized many other things that were not obvious, like what types of conditions people have, what are the issues that travelers experience most often, and what's the part that they care most about. So besides the language and taking that for granted, what's the other issue that they have? Do they want like the best known physician in the country? Do they want the highest specialist in the field, or do they want something that is quick and accessible and a solution to common needs? So that's how we kind of worked our way from an in-person experience into a clinic in Rome, a very touristic location in general in the world and in Italy, into something that is completely different, a digital marketplace where you just connect online, find a doctor, see them instantly, and then you're done with your medical experience. You can get back to your travel and fun.
So that segues perfectly. Let's get from doctors in Italy to Doctorsa, which I love the name. It's got like a cool energy to it. I don't know if the letter A translates to anything, but
It could
um,
be anything. Doctors, anything.
doctors anything. But I think it's a great natural pivot there. What was the biggest difference that you noticed early on in going from an in-person clinic in obviously one of the busiest, most fun cities in the world to really adopting like a telehealth model?
Well, first, one of the first differences was that when you're in person, we can know very well the people, the doctors, the physicians. It's very human intensive, and you go very deep into the problem of these people, how they solve it, what their solutions are, and also the experience of the doctors. When you turn this into a platform where you don't know all the physicians personally, and there are hundreds of people all around the world in different countries, different rules, etc. You have to focus on different aspects. So you have to be good at translating your vertical and in-person experience into how can I turn this into a repeatable digital experience? So how can I make it simple for people? Where do they get stuck? What can I make better? So that has been the major difference, I would say, between in-person and online. And then the difference is like, of course, the scale that you can reach. As long as you're doing an in-person, heavily like human intensive activity, you can't expect to scale quickly. And the world is just so big that you need to be able to launch in 31 countries in 6 months and then look at the next 31 and get going.
And you're going to be, I don't even know how many countries there are, but I'm sure you're going to be in like 6,000 of them in no time. There's definitely not that many countries, but
you can make up new countries, no worries.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, well, if we go way back in time, you've covered all of Pangea, so there you go. But I think it's a totally different ballgame. And when you're thinking of growing that quickly in that many different places, like you have to make some really, really good and also really, really quick decisions. Like what were some of the decisions that you made early on that have helped get Doctorsa where it is right now?
I think one of the most important decisions that we took early on was to focus entirely on the experience of final users. So to build a tool that doctors use daily, but is actually built for the benefit of customers, of the travelers and patients that they see. So that may sound obvious, but it's not so obvious. And it translates into different like minor interactions that people have with the platform. And the experience for doctors might be unsettling at first because it's not what they expect. And it's very different from any other app that they use to provide services to patients. But the doctors who understand it and who like it, they are actually absolutely perfect for this, and they enjoy it. They enjoy helping these type of patients, and it's just a perfect match.
How do you can you give us a little peek behind the scenes of like what the patient experience is like? Like if I'm traveling to made up country that you're in, and I need some quick help on the medical standpoint, how would I use Doctorsa?
Of course. So first of all, you would open the website and click on the big button that says see a doctor or start a consultation, or depending on the page where you are. Click on it and you fill out a quick intake form in which you explain where you are, what type of issue you're having, when you want to be seen. It could be like you need urgent care, so you want someone available right now, or it could be you want to book an appointment for tomorrow morning when you are actually in the country. So once you explain and hit send, your request is sent to all the doctors that can help you in this particular place. And then within a few minutes, you start receiving offers from these doctors. And you will get one that says that a doctor is available to see you in 5 minutes, and their fee is, I don't know, 20 euros. And they have a 4.9 star rating. You can read the reviews from past patients. Then another one is able to see you in 30 minutes, and their rate is maybe a little bit higher, but maybe they have 1,000 reviews, and then everyone has been super happy to see them. So you choose the one that fits best. It might be someone that speaks your native language, or that just seems lovely and you instantly connect with them. And then you get a link and you speak with the doctor. And a few minutes after the consultation, you get the prescription sent to you so that you can fill it at the pharmacy that's closest, get your medication, and then forget about it. In addition, we have added the feature of having 7-day free chat with the doctor, where you can ask all those questions that typically as patients we forget to ask. And then we realize that, oh, we don't know whether we need to take the medication with food or without food. And how many days am I supposed to take it for? Or how do I use this prescription at a local pharmacy? I'm not from Spain. I'm expecting a completely different experience. And then I need someone to help me. And this someone is the doctor, who not only helps you with your medical issue, but is also helping you manage the situation.
Yeah, I fortunately, like, I've never been sick abroad. I've probably in the past been hungover abroad. We're not going to talk about that.
That's a different thing.
But I would just imagine that, like, if for whatever reason I needed to get medical attention, like, I would feel so much better having like a set appointment and knowing there's somebody who's English speaking, knowing it's somebody who like I can see the reviews and trust the reviews, like so much better than that, and than just like like a walk-in somewhere in some place I've never heard of. Obviously, unless it was like a serious emergency, but I think it's a really really awesome like area that you're focusing on. What are I know obviously here in the US they call it HIPAA. I'm not sure what it's called around the world, but you can't reveal like patient identities, anything like that. But like in terms of typical sicknesses or ailments, illnesses, what types of things are typically treated by or doctors on Doctorsa?
Well, that's a good question. Consider that as travelers, we are out of our typical environment. We get in contact with new pathogens. We are often in crowded places where a ton of other people are. And then, honestly, it's just easy to get some sort of infection. It could be an upper respiratory infection. It could be gastrointestinal infection, maybe from eating foods that you're not used to, or just eating too much, or not enough, or not at the right time, or not sleeping well
that's
enough.
That's me. Eating too much, that's often me.
Absolutely. Or waking up too early every day and then suddenly feeling exhausted and not knowing whether you have pneumonia or you're just tired. And what's the issue there? And in all these situations, you do need a doctor to speak with and who can prescribe you the treatment that works for you. Most commonly, I would say there are urinary tract infections, especially for women, sore throats, again, coughs, fevers, bed bugs, other types of insect bites, rashes, and these types of conditions that are extremely annoying. They can easily ruin your day, and gladly, they can be treated just as easily with an online consultation and the right prescription.
Yeah, just you talking about all those things, like just hearing about how there's somebody there to help with you wherever you are in the world and growing in more countries, just like makes me feel better. Like it's soothing to hear about what you're creating. How about on the doctor's side? Because obviously like this whole thing doesn't work if you don't have the doctors. So how have you been able to find doctors, and also doctors that are like reputable, and that people are going to love to get treated by, basically?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say that doctors, so we attract probably the right type of doctor, and these are people who have had international experiences. They may have studied abroad for part of their academic career, or they have worked in another country and they feel connected to this aspect of working with patients from all over the world, and they don't normally get a chance to do that. In their regular practice, they see local patients, but they would love to use their English fluency as an asset to help more patients or to interact with people coming from different parts and all over the world. So usually they find us and want to be part of it, or sometimes we find ways to reach out to the right group of people and then attract them to work with us.
What's been the biggest challenge with that so far? Because there's so many doctors in the world, but when I think of doctors, and my brother's one, when I think of doctors, like they're so crazy busy and have such a different schedule. Like how do you make that work with Doctorsa?
That's a wonderful question. All doctors are
Thank
people
you.
too, and they also enjoy things like working from home and remote work, flexibility, and they all have different paths of life. So some doctors, as you said, and as many that we know, they are full on at the hospital. They're already just so busy that they can't possibly think of seeing one more patient. They have plenty to work with. Other doctors choose, for example, not to work in a hospital for personal reasons, for their career, and they prefer having like a direct relationship with the patient. And these people often have schedules that vary during the week, and they may have like 2 days in which they don't have clinical hours, they don't have any commitments, in which they could potentially see more patients. Or they do shifts at the hospital, but then they go back home and they're free in the evening and they enjoy having a few more consultations at night. Instead of watching Netflix, they see a patient and then get paid for it, of course.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like, well, I don't want to characterize it this way, but my first thought was it's almost like a side hustle for doctors, but it's not something that they're like, taking lightly. And if it takes, it's like a serious, it's a
Yes.
continuation of their job, and they're at the center of everything they do. It's helping patients and making people feel better. But it's really cool that you add that added option for doctors that are doing something else as well, that hey, you can also do this and help out these telehealth patients, and patients that need English speaking doctors. By the way, what I, I'm really intrigued by your expansion strategy. Like you mentioned that, now you're in, helping out patients in over 30 different countries. What's kind of the overall strategy there, and like how you choose what new countries or regions to expand to?
Well, we normally start considering our current users, and they are mostly international travelers. So we start from the list of most visited countries on a global scale and then target those countries. Of course, we analyze whether we can be effective there, whether it would be feasible to enter this market, and how quickly we can do so. And so far, it has been quite effective to follow this strategy. For example, one of the first markets we entered outside of Europe was Turkey. And Turkey is a growing touristic destination where millions of people go every year to see a beautiful country and have a local experience. And of course, they also do get sick like everyone else out there. So that has been, for example, a very effective and successful market launch. And similar cases go for Mexico and for Thailand that we have launched recently. So this is like our first approach. Then we are also considering the fact that people who use our platform typically give us the feedback that it was so easy, so cool, they wish they had it in their home country. And a large share of our users are actually British. And that's why one of the markets that we're currently launching in is actually the UK, where we serve both the traveler population in UK who doesn't have access to the NHS, they don't have a local doctor, and also the local population, patients who have used Doctorsa elsewhere and then they go back home, but their kid is sick and they want to get antibiotics prescribed and it's 10 p.m. in the evening and they don't know what to do, don't want to go to the emergency room. And then they tap on Doctorsa and get the prescription and get over it.
Well, I wasn't even thinking about it, but obviously the UK makes sense with English speaking. I studied abroad in London and always joked that like it was very difficult language barrier coming from the no, it was some words are different, like
Yes.
jumper and cheers, but no, it's awesome. But um, I'm curious when you the type of sicknesses or ailments. I still can't believe I said ailments earlier. That's unbelievable. But that, patients have on Doctorsa, would you say it's more like these are common things that people get, even when not traveling, or does it tend to be more like, as people say, not to be graphic, but like, a stomach bug or like traveler's diarrhea or things that people like when they're not used to the food in
Yeah.
a different country, the latter. Yeah.
I would say both. So these are all things that we experience even in our normal life at home. The main difference is that at home, you wouldn't be even looking for something like Doctorsa. You would consider your options based on your current knowledge of the healthcare system. So, for example, as an Italian, I would think, okay, I have my assigned doctor through the NHS, and I would go to them. It might not be convenient for me, but that's the first thing I think of. And because it's a solution, even though it's not the best, I would do that first. So it's much harder for a person who is at home to look for a solution like this and to actually find us. Whereas if you're traveling, you don't have your normal options, you're more open to finding new solutions. And that's why we are kind of using this as a way to be discovered by people who don't even know that this is an option. And many people have actually tried telehealth for the first time with Doctorsa as travelers. Now they're big fans. So they're very worried in their first experience with telehealth is typically a little bit stressful. We get this feedback a lot. They say, "Oh, I thought it was a scam because it seemed too easy." And I have been to the doctor many times. Maybe I'm like an older person and I have had experiences in healthcare and it has never been that easy. So something is off. It must be a scam. And then afterwards, when they see that it's not a scam, it actually works and they had a good experience, they become the biggest fans.
Well, I'm a big fan as well, and yeah, I had the same sort of trajectory with telehealth. Like we've used it before, and at first it's a little uneasy, and then once you're speaking to the doctor, you're like you kind of forget that you're talking through a computer screen or phone or however. Like you're at a a medical visit, and everything is how it is normally in person. It's just a different setting, so you can and it's way more convenient, especially when traveling to a whole different country. So it's just brilliant what you're doing there. So you actually stumbled onto something that I want to dive more into, and that is how you navigate the medical landscape and like rules and regulations and laws in so many different countries. Because that's like that. Like I feel like my head is about to explode just hearing that. just thinking through that. So you and team have had and do have your work cut out for you in that. So like when you expand to a new country, for example, how do you make sure that you have like a full understanding and you know the best way to proceed forward to make sure that like you're doing all this legally, you're doing all this in the best way in that specific country?
Well, the first thing is to study. First of all, get the data.
So your
Get down with
studying
it.
never ends.
Yes. Oh, never ends. And you study very boring documents, honestly. Things about how doctors are licensed, what type of licenses they need to be able to operate, what are the rules for telehealth? Can it be used as a tool to see patients? And can prescriptions be issued online? So all these things you have like a checklist to follow and understand what's the rule in this country? What do we need to make sure to follow? Then once you get this clear, and I have to say, in most countries it's similar. So there aren't that many differences. I mean, the bodies that govern it may change, they might be different names, but in the end, the playbook kind of works in every single country in the same way. And once you know it, then you have to just follow the rules and make sure that you're doing the right thing.
Is there an example of a country or like part of the world where you thought it would be kind of status quo, like same thing like launching in another country, and you're like, wait a second, there's all these other rules and considerations here?
Well, one is the UK, oddly enough, where gladly we
Yeah.
don't have the language barrier, so it has been at least easy to read the documents, where in order to have video consultations, physicians need an additional layer of certification compared to other countries, where once you're a physician and you're registered in the board of medicine in that country, you can practice in person and online. In the UK, there is an additional body that has to certify that you're also following correct practices for online care. So this is an additional certification that we request from doctors, for example.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. It's like so much to learn and so much to study. How do you personally carve out the time to look ahead to these new countries while also making sure that you're focused on your current countries?
Good question. So, well, I do what needs to be done, and that is true for all types of activities. And part of what needs to be done is work on the expansion and growth, and part of what needs to be done is make sure that things are running smoothly, and then improving on processes. So, of course, my co-founder and I, we share responsibility in this, so we have a very clear overview of every single step and the activities that we need to launch in a new country. We kind of split them between us. Okay, I'll do that, you do that, etc. And then we get things done. Basically, how everything else happens in a startup. And I was talking with a colleague recently about it, and he was a little bit worried about how his role would be named and the title that he would have, and these type of things that honestly to me don't matter at all. And that's why I never wanted to work in a large company. What really, really matters is the daily work and the details, and that one email more that you sent, and that one contact that you found, and that single small improvement that you made that compounds into a big success story 10 years later. So I just really care about the daily work and the details for myself and everyone else in the team as well.
Those are great words to live by, and to build a company by. I do what needs to be done. Like that's kind of how it is, I think, for so many entrepreneurs that we've talked to on the show, is that like there's not, sometimes you kind of just have to be flexible and like take care of this one day and take care of this the next day, or take care of this 1 hour and take care of this in the afternoon. Like you have to be really resilient there, and agile, I guess would be the term. But you also mentioned processes, and that's a huge thing for, I mean, that's what makes businesses run efficiently.
Yeah.
What's kind of your approach to process, and make sure or maybe some tips and tricks to make sure that things run really smoothly?
Well, one thing that obviously is a quite common suggestion that I have heard also in many other talks, it's actually to try it out. So you have to use the product, you have to try it from the beginning to the end, and and there you actually experience it as a user. And really, when you do that, forget about how it works and why it works like that, which is not always easy, but really just put yourself in the shoes of your user and try and get the experience from their point of view. And then you will see what doesn't work and what doesn't make sense, much more than just having a well-crafted Miro board with all the different steps, which of course is important, but it's more important, in my opinion, to just have a sense of what the experience is for the user.
Now, do you tell the doctors that you like, hey, this is me, co-founder of the company that's going through this experience, or do you keep that secret?
No, I get to the point of the visit. I don't technically do the visit because then it would be awkward, first of all, because they
Yeah,
would know me
exactly.
at some point, and also because I can't lie and say I'm sick if I'm not sick. No, no, but I do
Oh,
use
that's true.
all the rest of the experience up until the moment of the visit and afterwards and what happens next. And of course, I follow very closely the customer care side of the platform, even though it may sound like something that you want to delegate. I feel like this is something that, yes, of course, there should be someone doing it, but you have to be very clear about what the issues are for users at any given time. And if there are variations, like there is a new issue that people are experiencing often, you have to know. And you don't see this into reports, you don't see this into tickets, because it might be still like a minority of cases. You see it by checking regularly a random few cases and then looking the entire experience for these cases.
It's just so funny. Yeah, it makes sense the way you do it in the medical world. But we had on in episode 307, which I did just look up, even though this just happened, Max Barbier, the founder of Time Left, like Dinner with Strangers company. We
Cool.
had him on, and he goes like pretty much every Wednesday when they have their Dinner with Strangers nights. He goes to a different one, like somewhere in the world, and he's kind of undercover, and it's kind of like an undercover boss thing, because he wants to see how the whole experiences, and that's exactly how you are. It's just like you need to do it yourself to get a good understanding of it. But obviously, at a certain point, whether that's him or you, like people start to recognize, like, oh, like that's Nadia.
I've seen that, seen
So,
that face. Yeah.
and you personally, how did you become interested in like starting a business in this medical space in the first place?
I think I've always been interested in starting a business. I just had no idea where and what type of business. So I had kind of resigned to the fact that, yes, okay, I'll go to work in someone else's startup because they had the idea. I'll help them realize it. That was just fine for me. I had no problem with that. And then when I met my co-founder, we had just this wonderful alignment of objectives and values and what we wanted to solve. So we decided to do this thing together. And as with the best decisions of my life, I took it without even considering. I said, okay, let's do that. Let's drop everything and build a company.
Well, let's drop everything and wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Yes.
All right, let's get wild. I always am curious about this. You mentioned you were a non-native English speaker, and I think English is a ridiculous language. Obviously, it's very common, but there's a lot of quirks with it. What's an English word, or like the spelling of an English word that you are like, this makes no sense?
Well, that's a common one, but Worcester sauce is something that for a
Oh,
non-native speaker is just plain wrong. You can't write it like that and pronounce it like that. You have to get a different spelling of the word.
oh my God, I'm totally with you. Yeah, there's like 24 extra letters in that. and that
You don't need them.
there's so
Yeah.
many I know it has like native like English back to the, UK roots for words like that, and then here in the US and in New England, Boston and all that, there's a bunch of towns that have that like shire in it, or I think there's even a town maybe called Worcester, and it's an arm and a leg just to get through that word.
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
spoiled as
And
Italians because we pronounce every single letter that we write.
my wife Dana and I did our honeymoon in Italy, and a tour guide really early on was just like, speaking Italian is like singing and singing and singing every single letter, every single syllable. Speaking of language, singing language, I saw that at uni you studied some Mandarin as well. How would you characterize learning Mandarin compared to maybe learning some other languages?
It was a fantastic experience, and I at back then I was studying it very seriously, so I had learned pronunciation, writing, and I was very much into it. But as with most languages, if you don't use it at all, you forget it almost completely. So right now, I think I can just say four words and that's it. And then recently, I found on my old computer a file that I had saved with an essay that I wrote in Mandarin that now I can't even read. So I wrote it, but I don't even know what I wrote. So it's definitely something to try, at least just for the fun of it. While you're at university, just do that. You're gonna have fun. You'll love it.
You stumped yourself. You created an impossible password of words and characters that you have no idea what it means. I wish I could help you,
Whatsoever.
but I certainly am not fluent in Mandarin either. And speaking of uni, you went to school in Milan, but you also are live in Rome. Companies out of Rome, started out of Rome. What would you say is the biggest difference between living in Rome and living in Milan?
Um, so for me personally, I would say that when I moved in Rome, it's also when I started working at my own company. So I kind of started working night and day all the time. So I can't say that I really experienced the lifestyle in Rome and all the great things that the city has to offer. And it's definitely a more chaotic city, and many people are there for fun, for travel, for other reasons that have nothing to do with work. So for a person who's in a phase of life where they're just working and focusing on that, I would say that Milan is a very good choice because everyone else there is there for the same reason, to work a lot and then have fun outside of it. While in Rome, you are just in a place where people are there for a ton of different reasons, and you might be at odds with that at some point if you're focusing on just this aspect of your life.
Yeah, I know that's a really good way to do it. there's a lot of distractions in the world, especially at those cities. And I mean, we went through it here, and so many friends have done it as well. As like when we were looking at places for honeymoon, it's like, especially, I feel like it's even picked up in the past few years. Like everybody wants to go visit Italy, like from all around the world. Everybody wants to spend time there. So if you're living there and working
Yes.
there, you really got to keep your head down and focused.
I
All
understand them.
right,
It's
and
such a
then
beautiful city. It's so beautiful.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And oh my God, I could eat Italian food every meal ever for forever. But all right, and then last one. If there was one country in the world that you could go for like a full, or let's say city or island, it could be whatever. But if you could go for like a full month-long holiday to anywhere in the world, totally unplugged from work, where would that be?
It's a tough choice because there are so many. I would say I would probably go to New Zealand because I haven't been there.
Mm.
And I absolutely loved Australia. It's one of my favorite places in the world that I have been to. And I feel like I should have just done this extra step to go in New Zealand and just detach, stay there, enjoy nature, and see these fantastic places so far from where we are right now, on literally the opposite side of the world.
Yeah, it's just a short flight to get there. No, that's a great choice. I've heard amazing things. My cousin Sam and her husband Matt, they did their honeymoon in New Zealand and Australia, and I think they spent more time in New Zealand. And they still, like, sharing pictures and videos and talking about it. Just like the natural landscape out there is unbelievable. Like they've literally filmed movies there and Lord of the Rings and all that, but like
Yes.
makes you feel like you're on another planet. Well, Nadia Neytcheva, right? Good, right? um,
Perfect. This time,
Nadia,
perfect.
thank you. It only took me the whole interview, but Nadia, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Just love what you're doing. I think you're helping out so many, both on the patient side and the doctor side, and the local tourism bureau side, we'll call it. So really, just love what you're doing. I know that if anybody wants to learn more about Doctorsa or use your services in any of the countries that you're in and that's growing, you can go to, it's spelled doctors, plural, .com, doctorsa.com. And I hope I spelled that right because it's really hard to do that on a podcast. But is there anywhere else where if somebody wants to use Doctorsa or connect with you online, where do you want to shout out?
I'm on LinkedIn, so they can find me on LinkedIn. And I think I'm the only person in the world with my name, approximately. So I'm easy to find. And other than that, yeah, Doctorsa is the best place to try it out.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a nice perk, right? I think I'm the only Maxwell Aaron Brandstetter in the world.
Easy.
Not that I'm written out in all those words, but awesome. And then last thing, final thoughts. It could be a quote, just kind of one line, words to live by, whatever you want. Send us home here.
I would invite people to consider ourselves as people who inhabit a planet rather than people from one country, people from one background, and then see the future more like part of one world. And then use this as a chance to practice kindness and to connect with others and try and make the world a better place every day for everyone they meet.
Bring on the bongos!